I still remember the exact sound my phone made when the engagement photo went live. That soft, artificial click that meant the world had just been notified that my life had changed. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, still barefoot, my left hand trembling slightly as I stared at the ring. It wasn't oversized or flashy. It was elegant. Thoughtful. Intentional. Just like him. And just like the future I thought I was stepping into. The notifications started coming in immediately. Hearts. Exclamation points. Crying emojis. Finally. About time. I knew it. But there was one name I was waiting for. One name I kept refreshing for. And it never appeared. Her name was Maya. She had been my best friend for 11 years. Not the kind of friend you meet as an adult and casually attach meaning to. No. She was the kind of friend who knew my childhood house better than I did. The kind who had seen me cry on cold bathroom floors. The kind who knew which version of me was lying just by the way I breathed. When I got engaged, Maya didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't like the photo. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maya's busy. Maya probably hasn't seen it yet. Maya will call later and scream like she always does. But later never came. The next morning, my phone was full of messages, except from her. By noon, the excitement in my chest had started to feel lopsided. Like joy was happening on one side of me, and something unnamed was quietly rotting on the other. I sent her a text. Hey. Did you see? It showed delivered. Then read. And nothing else. No response. No emoji. No joke. No OMG. Just silence. That was the first day. By the third day, the silence had weight. It pressed against my ribs when I tried to sleep. It whispered questions into my ear when I stared at the ceiling. Did I do something wrong? Was I supposed to tell her first? Was she hurt? By the fifth day, I was scared. Because Maya had never ignored me. Not after fights. Not after misunderstandings. Not even after the one time I accidentally exposed her secret crush at a party and she swore she hated me forever. Silence wasn't her language. So I drove to her apartment. I didn't tell her I was coming. Part of me was afraid she'd tell me not to. When she opened the door, the first thing I noticed wasn't her face, it was her posture. She stood stiff, like someone bracing for impact. Oh, she said. Not hey. Not my name. Just, oh. I smiled anyway. Too wide. Too eager. Can I come in? She hesitated. Just half a second. But I felt it. Inside, everything looked the same. Same couch. Same candles. Same framed photo of us from years ago, arms linked, laughing like nothing in the world could touch us. I sat down. She didn't. So, I said, lifting my hand slightly, the ring catching the light. I guess you saw. Her jaw tightened. Yeah, she replied. Flat. No warmth. No happiness. The room filled with something sharp. Aren't you happy for me? I asked, my voice already betraying me. She crossed her arms. I don't know. That sentence cracked something open inside my chest. What do you mean you don't know? She looked at me then. Really looked. And in her eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Resentment. Not anger. Not jealousy, at least not the obvious kind. It was quieter than that. Older. You didn't tell me, she said. I wanted to tell you in person, I replied quickly. He proposed that night and You told the internet before you told me. Her words landed harder than they should have. I was going to call you the next morning. But you didn't, she interrupted. Silence stretched between us again, thicker now. More deliberate. I thought, she continued slowly, that if something like this ever happened, I'd be the first to know. I swallowed. I didn't think it would matter like that. She laughed once. Dry. Bitter. Of course you didn't. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. We talked for another 10 minutes. Or maybe it was an hour. Time felt warped. Nothing was resolved. Nothing exploded. And somehow, that made it worse. When I left her apartment, I felt like I had just attended a funeral, but no one had told me who died. That night, I stared at my ring again. But this time, it didn't sparkle. It felt heavy. And for the first time since he proposed, a question crept into my mind, uninvited, but persistent. What if this engagement didn't just change my future, but exposed something buried in my past? If this is resonating with you, pause for a second and hit like. It tells me you're feeling this too. And if you've ever lost someone the moment your life leveled up, you already know this story isn't really about a ring. Because the truth about Maya was only just beginning to surface. I didn't tell him what happened when I got home. He asked how Maya was, casually, gently, the way you ask about someone you assume is fine. She's good, I lied. The word good felt thin in my mouth. Like paper trying to cover something sharp. That night, he slept easily. One arm draped across my waist. Breathing steady. Safe. I stared into the dark, replaying every second in Maya's apartment. The hesitation at the door. The way she wouldn't sit down. That look, like she was watching me walk away from something she couldn't follow. By morning, my excitement had been replaced by a quiet anxiety that followed me everywhere. It showed up in small ways. I flinched when my phone buzzed. I reread messages, searching for hidden meanings. I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Like the first time Maya joked that I always won at life. She said it laughing. But now, remembering it, the laughter sounded forced. We met when we were 19. Two broke girls with big dreams and no map. We promised each other we'd grow together. That no matter who got there first, the other would be cheering the loudest. And for a long time, we did. When I got my first real job, Maya celebrated harder than I did. When she moved into her first apartment, I helped her paint the walls. When my last relationship fell apart, she slept on my couch for a week just to make sure I ate. So why did this feel different? I texted her the next day. I'm sorry if I hurt you. That wasn't my intention. She replied hours later. I just need space. 2 sentences. No punctuation. No softness. Space. That word is dangerous when it comes from someone who used to know your thoughts before you spoke them. Days passed. Then weeks. I tried to respect her boundary, at least on the surface. But privately, I dissected everything. I thought about how Maya had been single for a long time. Not unhappily, or so she said, but long enough for loneliness to settle in quietly. I thought about the night I told her I thought he might be the one. She had smiled. But she'd also changed the subject. I hadn't noticed then. Now, everything felt like a clue I'd ignored. One afternoon, while scrolling through old photos, I found a picture from years ago. The two of us at a wedding. She was holding the bouquet. I was holding a drink. Her caption back then had been, "Guess which one of us is getting married first?" People assumed it was me. She never corrected them. That realization hit harder than I expected. I wasn't just moving forward. I was leaving something behind. And maybe Maya had known it before I did. A month after the engagement, I ran into her unexpectedly. A grocery store. Fluorescent lights. Cereal aisle. She froze when she saw me. Like a deer caught in something too bright. "Maya," I said softly. She nodded. Didn't smile. "You okay?" I asked. She hesitated. Then sighed, the kind of sigh you release when you're tired of holding something in. "I just didn't think it would hurt like this," she said. "Hurt like what?" "Like losing you." My chest tightened. "You're not losing me." She looked at my hand. "At the ring." "You say that now." Something in her voice told me she believed this ending was inevitable. And for the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if Maya wasn't angry because I didn't tell her first? What if she was grieving a version of us that could no longer exist? If this story is hitting close to home, subscribe now, because what's coming next is where everything shifts. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt left behind, or been the one who moved on? Because what Maya confessed next wasn't about timing. Wasn't about a ring. It was about something she had been hiding from me, and from herself, for years. After the grocery store, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been circling us for years, waiting for the right moment to land. Her words echoed in my head. "I just didn't think it would hurt like this." Not "I'm happy for you." Not "I'll get over it." Just pain. Honest. Unfiltered. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the kitchen floor. I didn't turn on the lights. I needed the dark to think clearly. I started replaying our friendship, not the highlights, but the pauses. The moments where something almost got said. Like how Maya never liked him. She was polite. Respectful. But distant. She never said anything bad about him. She didn't have to. She just never leaned in. When I talked about our future, she listened, but she didn't dream with me. I told myself it was nothing. That not everyone connects the same way. But now, sitting there with a half-empty glass and a full heart, I realized something unsettling. Maya had never imagined my future the way I had. She had imagined us. 2 days later, she called me. No warning. No preamble. "I think we need to talk," she said. My stomach dropped. "Okay." She came over that evening. She looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone who had been carrying a truth for too long. We sat across from each other on my couch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Do you remember when we were 24 and made that stupid pact?" I nodded slowly. The pact. If neither of us were married by 35, we'd buy a house together. Travel. Be each other's family. We were joking, I said. She shook her head. I wasn't. The room tilted. Maya. I know, she interrupted quickly. I know how that sounds. And I'm not saying I expected you to choose me over him. I'm not insane. Her voice cracked. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my best friend. My throat went dry. She stood up, pacing now. Words spilling faster, like once she started, she couldn't stop. You were the person I planned around. The constant. The one thing in my life that felt permanent. I felt something cold slide down my spine. And when you got engaged, she continued, it wasn't the ring that hurt. It was the realization that I had built a future where you were central, and you had built one where I was optional. Silence slammed into the room. I wanted to argue. To defend myself. To say that's not fair. But the truth is, it was fair. Pain doesn't ask permission to be logical. Maya, I said softly, why didn't you ever tell me? She laughed through tears. Because I didn't understand it myself until it was too late. She stopped pacing and looked at me. And because I knew, if I named it, I'd lose you faster. That sentence broke something open inside me. All those years of closeness. Of intensity. Of exclusivity. Had I mistaken emotional dependence for friendship? Or had we both benefited from a blurred line neither of us wanted to redraw? I'm not in love with you, she said quickly, as if reading my thoughts. Not like that. But you were, my person. I nodded, slowly. So was she. That was the tragedy. Some bonds don't end because of betrayal. They end because they were never meant to survive growth. She wiped her face and sat back down. I don't know how to be your friend right now, she admitted. Not while everything in me is adjusting to a life where you're choosing someone else. The word choosing stung, even though she wasn't wrong. That night, after she left, I didn't cry immediately. I sat still, listening to the quiet. And for the first time, I let myself ask the question I had been avoiding. Had our friendship been holding both of us back, without either of us realizing it? If this moment feels heavy, take a second to like this story, it tells me you're still here with me. And if you've ever been someone's emotional home, you know how hard it is to move out. Because what came next wasn't closure. It was distance. And distance has a way of revealing truths you can't see up close. After that conversation, nothing exploded. No dramatic goodbye. No slammed doors. No final argument to point to and say, that's when it ended. Instead, things just loosened. Threads that had once been tight began to fray quietly. We didn't officially stop talking. We just stopped reaching. Days went by where I'd pick up my phone, open her name, and then close it again. Not because I didn't miss her, but because I didn't know who I was allowed to be to her anymore. Was I the friend who shared everything? Or the one who edited herself out of kindness? I didn't know. Wedding planning moved forward whether I was ready or not. Venues. Guest lists. Flowers. Every decision carried a shadow, because every choice reminded me that Maya was no longer at the center of my life. When I wrote the maid of honor line, my hands hovered over the keyboard longer than they should have. I didn't write her name. That night, I cried in the shower so he wouldn't hear me. He noticed anyway. You're allowed to grieve, he said gently. Even when nothing bad happened. I nodded, but part of me felt ashamed. I was engaged to a man who loved me deeply. Why did it feel like I was losing something just as significant? Because I was. Maya didn't disappear all at once. She faded. She missed my dress appointment. Didn't comment on photos. Didn't ask about details anymore. And I didn't push. We both understood that forcing closeness would only prolong the ache. One afternoon, I opened an old voice note she'd sent me years ago. We were laughing. Talking over each other. Planning a future that felt endless. I barely recognized us. Not because we had changed, but because we had outgrown that version of connection. I started noticing other things too. How often Maya had relied on me to regulate her emotions. How often I had postponed my own growth to maintain our balance. I didn't resent her for it. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. Growth has a cost. And sometimes, the price is proximity. A few weeks later, I got a message from her. I hope you're happy. That was it. No bitterness. No warmth. Just acceptance. I typed and erased a dozen replies. In the end, I wrote. I am. And I hope one day you will be too. She reacted with a heart. That was the last message we ever exchanged. I stared at the screen for a long time after. Not because I expected more, but because I finally understood something painful and freeing at the same time. Some people are meant to walk with you to the edge of your next life. But they are not meant to cross it with you. If this part made you pause, subscribe now, because what comes next isn't about Maya anymore. It's about what her absence taught me. And the moment I realized this loss was necessary. I didn't feel her absence right away. At first, it was subtle. Like reaching for a light switch in a dark room and realizing it had never been there. I had just memorized where I thought it was. I'd have a thought and instinctively reach for my phone. A joke. A doubt. A fear I wasn't ready to say out loud. Then I'd remember. Maya wasn't my first call anymore. And the realization hurt, but it also revealed something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I had been using her as an emotional mirror. Every decision felt safer once she reflected it back to me. Every fear felt smaller once she shared the weight. Without her, I was forced to sit with my own voice, uninterrupted. And it was louder than I expected. Wedding planning became quieter. More intentional. I stopped asking for reassurance and started asking myself harder questions. Do I want this? Or does it just feel like the next step I'm supposed to take? The answer surprised me. I wanted him. I wanted the life we were building. But I also wanted something else, something I had postponed for years. Independence without permission. I realized how often I'd shaped my choices around not leaving Maya behind. How I'd softened my ambition so she wouldn't feel abandoned. How I'd stayed emotionally available in ways that blurred my own boundaries. None of it was malicious. But all of it mattered. One night, I stood in front of the mirror, ring on my finger, and asked myself a question that felt dangerous. Who am I when no one is depending on me emotionally? The answer wasn't clear, but it was mine. And that changed everything. I stopped feeling guilty for moving forward. I started understanding that love doesn't always mean staying close. Sometimes it means letting distance do its work. Weeks turned into months. The ache dulled. The memories softened. And in that space, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. Not because Maya meant less, but because I was no longer carrying a role I never consciously agreed to play. I loved her. I always would. But I was no longer responsible for being her constant. If this realization is hitting you hard, pause and hit like, because growth rarely looks dramatic, but it always feels disruptive. And tell me quietly in the comments, have you ever realized you were someone's anchor, without knowing how heavy that made you? Because the final truth didn't come gently. It came the day Maya showed up again, unexpectedly, and said the one thing I didn't know I needed to hear. I didn't expect to see her again. Not like that. Not after the silence had settled into something almost peaceful. It was a Sunday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I remember because I was barefoot, hair tied up carelessly, surrounded by wedding magazines I hadn't touched in days. When I opened the door, my breath caught. Maya stood there, thinner somehow. Not physically. Emotionally. Like she had shed something heavy. Hi, she said. Not oh. Not distant. Just, hi. I stepped aside without thinking. Come in. We stood awkwardly in the living room, like strangers borrowing each other's memories. I won't stay long, she said. I just needed to see you. I nodded. She looked around. At the apartment. At the life that had continued without her. You look different, she said. So do you. She smiled at that. We sat. This time, she chose the couch. I went to therapy, she said suddenly. The words landed softly, but they shifted the air. I had to, she continued. After you got engaged, everything I buried came up at once. Not just about you. About my life. I listened. Quiet. Open. I realized I had been using our friendship as a substitute for things I was afraid to pursue, she said. Romantic connection. Risk. Even independence. Her honesty stunned me. I didn't want to resent you, she went on. So I had to step away before that happened. I felt something loosen inside my chest. I'm sorry I disappeared, she said. But I needed to break the pattern. Not punish you. Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but relief. I never stopped loving you, she added quickly. I just had to learn how to love you without losing myself. We sat in silence after that. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just honest. For the first time in months, I felt peace where grief used to be. She stood to leave. I don't know what we are now, she said. And I don't want to force it. I nodded. Neither do I. At the door, she paused. I'm really happy for you, she said. I mean that. And this time. I believed her. After she left, I didn't rush to fill the space. I let it be. Some endings don't need to be permanent to be real. Some distances don't mean abandonment, they mean growth. If you're still here, subscribe now, because the final part isn't about her return. It's about what this story taught me about love, timing, and letting go without bitterness. Maya didn't become part of my daily life again. And that was okay. We didn't go back to late-night calls or inside jokes that filled entire afternoons. We didn't reclaim the intensity. What we found instead was something quieter. Healthier. Less consuming. An occasional message. A shared article. A birthday call that felt sincere, not obligatory. And in that space, I finally understood what our friendship had really been. It wasn't toxic. It wasn't manipulative. It was unfinished. We met each other before we knew who we were allowed to become. Before we learned how to choose ourselves without guilt. For years, we grew side by side, but not always forward. My engagement didn't break our friendship. It revealed the parts of it that couldn't survive the next version of us. And that realization stayed with me on my wedding day. When I walked down the aisle, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I had learned. That love doesn't always look like staying. That some connections are meant to shape you, not stay with you forever. That growth will always offend the parts of people that rely on your stillness. Maya was there. Not in the front row. Not beside me. But present. And that felt right. Later that night, she hugged me and whispered. You chose yourself. I'm proud of you. I hugged her back, lighter than I'd ever felt. Because I finally understood why she stopped talking to me after my engagement. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't betrayal. It was grief. Grief for a version of our bond that couldn't exist anymore. Grief for a future she hadn't realized she was building alone. And grief doesn't always know how to speak. Sometimes, it only knows how to disappear. If this story stayed with you until the end, thank you. Leave a like if it resonated. Subscribe if you want more stories about emotional truth, quiet endings, and the courage it takes to grow. And tell me in the comments, softly, honestly. Have you ever had to let go of someone you loved, not because they hurt you, but because you outgrew each other?